Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is you're watching today's weekly word at. Today, the devotional is coming to you from John chapter 14, verse 15. It is a very short verse, but we're going to unpack it a bit. Jesus is talking to his disciples and giving them comfort and promising the coming of the Holy Spirit. But in the midst of all that, he says very famously, "If you love me, keep my commands." That's a fairly unique statement. If you love me, keep my commands. I want to talk to you today about different kinds of love. Now, usually when that is said, people think you're going to go with eros versus phileo versus agape and maybe even storge. That tends to be where people go when they're talking about different kinds of love, and rightfully so. But today I want to talk to you about different kinds of love based upon relationship. So the way in which you love someone is dependent upon the relationship you have with them. You should not love God the same way you love your child. You should not love your child the same way you love your spouse. You should not love your spouse the same way you love your neighbor. All of these things seem very obvious, self-evident. I think it's important to focus in on this to a certain degree because there's a distinction between types of love that needs to be made clear. If you're going to love God, there's only one way that is appropriate, and that is obedience. It's very clear that if you're going to love God, then you have to understand what that relationship means. For him to be God means something different than him being your advisor, your counselor, your comforter, your friend, your brother, your spouse, any of those things. Those relationships all show us facets of the relationship of God and man, but ultimately, if you're going to love God as God, then your obeisance, your fealty is required. To some degree, you can make a closer comparison, I guess, with this to Middle Ages, how you should serve your king. Your very life should be forfeit in order to obey, and given gladly. And so the same kind of a relationship should exist between you and God. If you love him, it doesn't just mean that you have an emotional fondness or attraction to the statement of beliefs. It means that you have chosen him as your God. And so his word is law to you. His desires are your desires. His dreams for you more important than your dreams for yourself. Love is consistent in all of these things. Love ultimately means self-sacrifice, that you see in the other something worthy of your sacrifice of self. That's true. That's consistent across the board. And so we know what love is because he showed us what love is when he sent his son to die for us while we were still sinners, while we were still his enemies. So love is ultimately self-sacrifice because we see value in the other. But the other, who they are and what that relationship is like, determines what that love should look like. If you're going to love God as God, keep his commands. Jesus is brooking no disagreement here. He's saying something quite profound. You must love me differently. In fact, those greatest commandments point to the same thing. You should love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And the second is like unto it. You should love your neighbor as yourself. You should love God differently than you love yourself. All your heart, mind, soul, and strength is how you love God. How you love your fellow human being is distinct from that. And so your fellow human relationships can't make the same requirement of you. It would be quite unhealthy to say, if you love me, keep my commands. This is, in fact, an area that I believe mainly men, but human beings in general, fall into this trap. We don't simply desire to be loved, especially by our wives. We desire to be worshiped, and that is sin. There's a difference between being loved and being worshiped. There's a difference between being respected and being worshiped. And I would challenge you, men who are listening to this video, contemplate your relationship with your wife. When you become angry or frustrated with her and her responses, her activities towards you, is it because she's treating you in a way you would understand as disrespectful? Or is it that she's deigning to question you at all? You see, quite often we're tempted to expect worship from our wives and our children rather than love and respect. She should not love you as she should love Christ. It should be different. And men, we need to get off of our high horses. We need to climb down off the thrones we were never meant to inhabit and realize that God alone should be worshiped and that our wives are our strong allies. They have chosen to make their lives united with ours, and their insights are helpful. I hope this insight has been helpful to you, to all of you, male, female, father, mother, child, uncle, aunt, whatever your relationship may be, that you draw a clear distinction between how you love Christ and how you love anyone and everyone else, including and especially yourself. May our great God and King bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And may you be gracious to all those you meet today.